Welcome. In this explainer, we're going to do a focused clinical deep dive into the Twiist automated insulin delivery system. Really, our goal here is to give you the practical, need-to-know insights so you can feel totally confident setting up, optimizing, and troubleshooting this technology for your patients. So let's get right into it. So right off the bat, you see the core components, right? You've got the Twiist pump itself, the iPhone app, which is basically the brains of the operation, and of course that slick Apple Watch integration. But what's really exciting for us as clinicians is the technology running behind the scenes. That's what really opens up the door for truly personalized patient management. We've broken this down into 5 key parts. We'll kick things off with what makes this system unique. Then, we'll walk through those all-important initial setup parameters. After that, we'll get into the real art of fine-tuning, cover some common troubleshooting calls you're likely to get, and then wrap up by talking about who the ideal patient for this system really is. Okay, let's jump into section 1, what really makes Twiist different. To truly get the most out of this system, we first have to understand the 2 big innovations that are really driving everything. The system's precision really boils down to 2 key technologies working in tandem. One is all about making sure insulin is delivered accurately, and the other is the brain that decides how much insulin to deliver in the first place. Let's tackle that first piece, delivery verification. So this is the first game changer. Think about traditional pumps. They pretty much just assume insulin was delivered because a motor turned. Well, Issure technology is totally different. It uses sound waves, kind of like sonar, to directly measure the volume of every single microbolus. This gives you real-time confirmation of delivery, and it means the system can spot occlusions and blockages way, way faster. It's a pretty foundational shift in how we think about delivery accuracy. And the second piece of the puzzle is the brain of the whole operation, the Twiist loop algorithm. This thing is a predictive powerhouse, and it is always working. Every 5 minutes, it's pulling in CGM data, looking at insulin on board, checking carb intake, and recalculating a 6-hour glucose forecast. Based on that forecast, it automatically tweaks the basal insulin, all with the goal of gently steering your patient's glucose right into the middle of the correction range you set. It's all about being proactive. Which brings us perfectly to section 2, those critical initial setup parameters. And I can't stress this enough. Getting these settings right from day 1 is the single most important thing you can do to make sure the algorithm has the right information to work its magic for your patient. This screen right here, this is your command center. Every single one of these fields, from basal rates to carb ratios to insulin sensitivities, is a lever that directly tells the algorithm how to behave. This isn't just a manual pump with an algorithm slapped on top. These settings are the absolute foundation that the algorithm builds everything on. And just look at the level of precision you have at your fingertips. The correction range is the widest out there. You can set it anywhere from 87 all the way up to 180. Carb ratios? You can dial those in with tiny 0.1 grams per U increments. And basal rates can be adjusted in these incredibly small 0.05 unit steps. This kind of granularity gives you just immense control to really tailor the therapy to each individual. Okay, so you've laid the foundation. Now we move on to section 3, fine-tuning the loop algorithm. This is where we go beyond that initial setup and really start to optimize the system for your patient's unique physiology and their lifestyle. Now, one of the most crucial settings to get right is the maximum basal rate. It's easy to think of this as just a safety limit, but it's so much more. This is the ceiling that tells the algorithm how aggressively it can ramp up basal insulin to fight a rising glucose. If you set this too low, you're basically handcuffing the system. The clinical guidance is to start at a minimum of 4 times the patient's highest programmed basal rate. That gives the algorithm enough room to do its job. Here are 3 really key clinical pearls. First, please resist the temptation to just copy and paste settings from an old pump. You want to recalculate everything fresh based on their current total daily insulin. Second, make sure you teach your patients about retroactive carb entry. It's a great feature. If they forget to bolus, they can enter the carbs later, and the algorithm is smart enough to figure out if a correction is still needed. And third, use the presets. A temporary higher target for a workout or a more aggressive pre-meal target can make a huge difference in their day-to-day control. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of practical stuff. In section 4, common clinical troubleshooting, we're going to walk through the exact steps for some of the most common alerts your patients might be calling you about. So, given how sensitive that Issure technology is, a line-blocked alarm is definitely one you can expect patients to see from time to time. Here's the exact protocol to walk them through. First things first, have them disconnect from their body.
Then they'll tap Next in the app to get the process started. The first thing to do is a simple visual check of the cassette and tubing for any obvious kinks. Now, here's a key clinical tip. Even if they don't see a thing, if the patient felt any discomfort at the site, it's just best practice to go ahead and replace the whole infusion set. After they confirm that, the pump runs a quick self-test. If it passes, they're good to go. Reconnect and resume insulin delivery.
Two other really common alerts are pump battery low and that dreaded communication loss icon. The good news is the fixes for these are usually super straightforward. For a low battery alert, well, that one's pretty obvious. Just have them change the battery. For communication loss, the very first step is always to just quit and restart the app. A lot of times that's all it takes. If that doesn't do the trick, a battery change can sometimes help reset the connection. And of course, remind the patient to maybe move away from other wireless devices that could be causing interference. Okay, let's move into our final section, the ideal Twiist candidate. Just like with any advanced system, patient selection is absolutely key to getting the best possible outcomes. The indications for use are pretty clear-cut. We're talking about patients age 6 and up with type 1 diabetes for single-patient at-home use. But just as important are the contraindications. This system really isn't for patients who have trouble seeing or hearing alarms, who are unwilling or unable to do fingerstick checks, or have cognitive or physical impairments that would make it tough to operate both the pump and the iPhone app. And that brings us to the end of our clinical walkthrough. The Twiist system really does offer this unique blend of precision measurement and deep algorithmic customization. So the final question really is for you to think about. Based on everything we've covered, which of your patients just popped into your head? Who could really use these tools to reach a whole new level of glycemic control?